Hey everybody, welcome to What's Next DIY. Today we're going to be talking about should I go solar and the thought process that I'm using to make the decision. Let's get on with it. Well, first things first, why do I want to go solar? There's three major topics that I'm interested in, and that's cost savings, the return on investment, environmental impact, and grid independence. As far as cost savings go, that's the most important thing to me. If it doesn't make financial sense, I can't really be going with the solution or be thinking about doing this. The environmental impact, it's important to me. It's not one of my top concerns, but it's nice to know that I'm reducing my carbon footprint. It's a little bit controversial whether it really is help save the environment, but I think it does in my opinion. As far as grid independence goes, a lot of people would like to have energy at all times, and this is not really a big factor of mine. It is nice to know that I am helping curb rising rates on my end, so inflation and increased cost that the energy companies provide them. All right, so is my house a good candidate for solar? Some of the things that I need to think about is the HOA policy. Luckily, I don't have one, but if you do, many of them don't allow solar panels at all. Some of them dictate where you can put them on your roof, such as not allowing it to be on the side of your house that faces the street. They may not allow ground mount as well. So those are kind of the things you need to find out about your HOA policy. And they might only allow you to hire a professional to do it that's licensed. You may not be able to do it yourself. And then, the next thing I need to think about is, what is good for my house. So luckily, my house faces south. And, that's a great exposure for solar panels here in the Midwest. You may have to go east and west. You need to know that you're going to lose about 20% efficiency in that if you go east-west. And then you could go ground mount. But for me, ground mount won't work. That's right in front of my house would be the only good position for me. And I don't want the looks of a big solar farm in my front yard. So the other thing to consider on the ground mount is, how easy is it for your location to get those wires into the house, and you're going to have to go under a driveway. Is it super far away? Things of that nature. For the roof mount, you need to look at the age of your roof. Luckily for me, my roof was done when I bought the house, and so it's only about 5 years old or so. So I don't have to worry about replacing my roof for, say, 20 years. So I'm, good with mine. You may have to look at the cost of getting your roof done if you're pretty close to needing one. So for me, it's my house is a really good candidate for a roof. And also you got to look at the space you have on your roof if it's also good. So my house is a great candidate for solar. All right, so what's next? Do I need batteries or do I want batteries? Some of the major factors to think about there is how reliable is the grid. So for me, my grid is reliable. I've had a couple, like 2 outages the time I've lived in this house that were, more than blips. nothing too big and doesn't concern me. So that's not really an option for me. The other thing is, do you want to generate power at an outage? But most solar systems do not generate power if the grid's not there for reference. So you need some sort of battery backup or a generator to provide that reference, so that they can match that reference and generate power. And then the other thing is do you want to compensate for net metering? So some utilities, they charge a different rate during prime time hours than they do all the rest of the day. So for me, my utility company does do that. It's Monday through Friday, 5 to 8. They charge a higher rate. So you may want to have that battery backup so you can compensate for those higher usages based on if you're going net metering and what your utility company provides. But we'll talk more about net metering a little bit later. Okay, so we were talking about net metering before. So what is your energy company's net metering policy? So for my company, it is retail rate, whether it's prime time billing or every other time billing. So whenever I generate, they give me the same thing that I pay them. So if I'm generating during their prime time, they're giving me prime time fees. So that's great. Some, they don't pay the prime time rate, and there's some states that they're starting to pass new legislation that doesn't require utility companies to pay retail rates at all. They might be only paying you wholesale rate. So that's something to be aware of. And legislation is passing all the time. I know Indiana is passing something here in June of 2022. I think Florida passed a law here the last few months. And of course, it's in the utility company's favor. So, but luckily I have a co-op, and they're usually a little better about these policies. Another thing about utility companies, they like to slow down the process. So you're technically not supposed to turn on your solar system until they come out, inspect your system, install a net meter. And until then, you can't even legally turn it on. One thing that I'm going to tell you guys, you should go ahead and get a quote from a local pro. Once you get a quote and they go through the sales pitch with you, you can ask them questions about how your utility is to deal with, how, what is that utility policy. They can cover those things for you. And usually they have pretty good insight on how good these people are to work with. And it'll give you a good insight on the size of the system that you'll need, because they'll have you submit them a utility bill for the last year so they could size your system. So that'd be good to have that information. I've already done it. I've had a few quotes, so I know basically what I need for my house. All right, so now let's talk about the cost analysis. Now this is the big decision factor for me. If this doesn't make financial sense, I don't want to do it. It's a lot of work and effort if you're not going to be making a profit on it, in my opinion. So let's start with my electrical cost now. So I pay roughly $160 a month. Multiply that by 12 months. My bill for the year is roughly $1,920. Now I got some quotes for a system, and the lowest quote that I got was $25,000, and that was for a 7.4 kilowatt system, and that was with optimizers, LG panel, big name inverter, and all that good stuff. I also looked at some DIY kits, and they were somewhere around 12 to 15. And then I looked at individually just buying the components, and I think I can get it under $10K if I do it myself. Now for the payoff for the professional installed kit, you take your $25K. Right now they have a 26% federal tax incentive. So you reduce that cost by 6.5K. So it comes out to $18,500. And then on a DIY, if I can keep it under 10, I'll get 2.6K back, and so that cost would be 7.4K. Now, if we divide those by what I estimate I'm going to save a year, and my estimation was $100 a month, and I think that is relatively a low savings. I think I'll get more than that, but I wanted to be safe in my calculations and decision-making process. So that come out to $1,200 a year, so 1.2K. So the payoff for the professional installed system is going to take me 15.4 years. So that leaves me about 10 years of ROI on the system, maybe longer. Just really depends. For the DIY, it's only going to take me 6.16 years at that rate. So it may even go faster if I could save some more per month. So the ROI on the Pro Kit, so 10 years at $1,200 a month, which it'll actually probably be a lot more by then due to inflation and rising costs. So you're looking at making $12,000 profit with the 18.5 initial investment. Well, 25K, but eventually you get that other money back. So 12K profit, not bad. Now let's look at the DIY. So that's it'd be paid off for 19 years, and I would generate $1,200 worth of electricity every year. So that's 22.8 thousand profit. That is great for initial investment of 10,000. Doubled, tripled my money. So I think that's really great, and I think that's very exciting. All right, so let's look at the pros and cons. So one pro is ROI. That's a pretty good savings. Even on the professional, you're making money, and you're doing some environmental savings and have a little bit of independence from the grid to an extent. But the cons is it's a lot of money to put up front. Now you can get loans and things like that, but that's really going to affect your ROI because you're going to be paying interest on that money, right? And the lease to own option that some of these big companies are doing, that is scary. I would stay away from that if I could at all possible. I think I wouldn't go solar if I was in one of those situations. So a con is working on the roof. I'm not in the best shape. It's been a long time since I've had to work on a roof. I have a halfway decently steep roof. It's a 712, so not terrible. But it's at the edge of my comfort zone. I don't like to go much higher than that. But on the pro side of that is I have friends that are in that business. So I could easily call upon them if I really needed their help and get stuck. It cost me a little bit of money, I'm sure, but I wouldn't expect them to help me for free on something of this nature. But, that's kind of how it is. Next, we got a pro is electrical. So on the electrical side of this, I have quite a bit of experience in the electrical side. I've wired my whole workshop and things. So I know how to do that. And I also have electronics background from the military training and been dealing with that as a service tech for many years before my current job. So I think I got the electrical side really covered. But on the con side of that is the permits. Obviously I don't know what it takes to get through the permitting process of a solar system and whether I'm going to have to do some electrical drawings and all this and how well I have to be at it or how professional they need to look. But I have, submitted some building permits in the past and past life. So it's generally not really that hard, and smaller areas and here in the Midwest, they're pretty easy to get through the process, and they'll generally help you if they can. But I do also know that there's permitting services out there for solar, and they can provide the plans to you. So hopefully that would eliminate some of that con there. But it's still con. And one con that I didn't list on there, and it's on the DIY side. If I do it myself, I've never done solar before. I know a lot about it because I've done a lot of reading, a lot of research. Watched a ton of videos. I have that electrical background, so I understand a lot of the major concepts and know what they would do. So it's but it's still a thing. I'd hate to try to design something myself and then totally blow up in my face. So it's a little bit of a nervous thing, but I think I got it covered. Now that I've shared my major considerations that I put into making the decision on going solar, guess what's next? I'm going to DIY a grid tie solar system. As always, if you like this video, don't forget to leave a comment, like and subscribe, and vote on what you want to see next on What's Next DIY.